Please welcome CEO Mandiant Google Cloud, Kevin Mandia.
Go. All right, good. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm your second to last speaker today. Then we all have dinner to go to. I've got about 19 and a half minutes. What I want to do is kind of brief you the conclusions, at least part of the conclusions that I have based on over 1,100 investigations we did during the year, based on several hundred red teams we did during the year, the threat intelligence that came from the threat analysis group, as well as Mandiant's threat intelligence group, and then all the advisory services that we did. So I did my best to collect those conclusions. We'll go through them very quickly, and it's not just admiring the offense. We're also going to do some things because we all came here to learn how to defend our network, so we're going to do that. This is 5 of the conclusions that we have based on all of our observations, really right up till a few minutes ago. I changed a few while I was backstage. The reality is, first and foremost, the conclusion when looking at the last 12 months of incidents, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of risks or repercussions to compromising the enterprises that we see globally. We say an acceleration on the innovation on offense. I don't know if it's really accelerated, but we saw good innovation by offensive attackers and threat actors. Ransomware has evolved to data theft, to extortion, to potentially even now harassment and other things. The board's more engaged, and then I think we had the best year ever between the the partnership between the government and the private sector. So it's worked really well. So I'll drill down on each one of these. First and foremost, the few risks or repercussions to the threat actors. When we look at this, I think every modern nation understands there's going to be spying, and that you probably can't prevent espionage, and it's hard to come up with rules for espionage. So my theme here of imposing risk is on the criminal actors, the folks that may have come to a height or a threshold where it feels almost intolerable. So when you look at the slide behind me, I almost wanted you to see the numbers, and these represent the lowest bounds of the criminal enterprise compromising and doing ransomware and extortion. You get the chain analysis slide on the Bitcoin paid that seems to be tied to extortion or ransomware, but more importantly, just the impact on private companies or publicly traded companies that are just doing their jobs, and we're seeing damages equating to 100 million, 800 million, and these are the lower bounds. The damages from this tends to go up and to the right. So the question that we always have is, so what do we do about it? And when you look at the ransomware problem, there's a lot of folks in the camp of, we have to do better defense. I get that, and that's why we're all here. We all want to do better defense. Second thing we probably have to look at is cryptocurrency and the means and ways at which we can track cryptocurrency. Some people think it's not always a great idea to have an anonymous currency that can be paid thousands of miles apart from one another. Third thing we have to do is we have to look at the treaties we have and modernize some of these treaties. We need to have attribution and impose risk. So I would ask that all the folks in law enforcement, in the intelligence community, and in the private sector revisit some of the ways to do attribution, and for the folks in different governments globally to look at what are the safe harbors and safe haven for the criminal actors, and can we modernize treaties with those nations so that we can impose more risks or costs. But I think the time has come where we have to continue to think it. I know we have lots of task forces globally, and we have lots of groups working on this problem, and we all look forward to progress being made in that regard. We've seen the acceleration of innovation, and I'll go through each one of these categories individually, so let's hop right into it. And it's not necessarily bad news. When you see innovation on offense, you really go right to the zero-day account, and we had a long run of tracking this from 1998 right up till now, and it used to be between 10 to 15 0 days a year were found, and a zero-day, of course, attack with no patch. Now you're looking at, we found 97 0 days in the last year in the wild, about a third of them found by Mandiant and Google. What I found most interesting about these 0 days is really shown on this slide, and I know there's a bunch of numbers here, but focus in on the amount of vendors impacted, and that also includes like freeware. I guess we just call different libraries a vendor. But when you look at this, 31 vendors impacted, and there's always the big three. You're going to have Microsoft, you're going to have Google, you're going to have Apple. But then in addition to those, We've got 28 other organizations that there are zero-day attacks against them. To put that in perspective, there's about 4 companies impacted outside of the big 3 in 2018. So the number of vendors being attacked is phenomenal. Now, why are there this many zero days? There's a whole bunch of rampant theories on it. Maybe we got better at defense, and so you have to break in with 0 days. Maybe the offense is so well funded now, they just come up with them more. Maybe AI is helping the offense find vulnerabilities faster. Maybe we're all just shipping really bad software and not trying hard enough to patch it. I actually think maybe it's a combination of some of that, but it's actually because the impact of the breach, if you do espionage, you get what you want, and if you do crime, you get what you want. Cyber intrusions are paying off, and that's why I think you're seeing this happen. But again, what this means is you've got to have a way to respond to the zero day. This slide shows that globally, when we looked at every incident we responded to, the #1 way people broke in was in fact an exploit. What this means is all of us have to think, assume breach, do attack surface management, do patch management, and then really have great rules for what happens post those things. You know, the assumed breach mentality. I just saw G2 say, segmentation is hard, updating's hard, and patching is hard. That's okay, we gotta do them. There will always be a zero day, and you hear people say we're gonna do secure by design and get it down to 0, but 0 day is not just software. At some point in time when you assume breach, you also make the assumption maybe you have an insider that can create havoc on the network. So the bottom line, this trend is different. From 1998 till approximately 2019, the #1 way people were breaking in is spear phishing and exploiting human trust. It has changed since 2020 back to what it was like from 1993 to 1998, which is exploitation. And for those who just need to see what are they exploiting, there you go. There's the top 3 things that were exploited in 2023 for us. Chinese Nexus espionage improved during the year, and I think the biggest improvement here I could dive into, they had 12 zero days, and the next nation we could do attribution for had only 2. In my career, I usually saw Russia as #1 with the zero-day exploitation, and China started making that list around 2005, 2006, but now they're leading in that list. When we look at the majority of the zero days that we see for espionage, we cannot attribute them to the nation behind them, which means maybe the espionage are being surreptitious when they do it. When you look at that, go from the 0 days, I can combine the next 2 bullet points that you need custom code when you hack edge devices. When you hack edge devices, you're circumventing EDR space. You're circumventing the endpoint protections that we have. We've seen Chinese cyber espionage do this 2 years ago. They did it again throughout 2023, specifically compromising things like VPNs, email gateways, and other network devices that we rely on to defend our networks. So, and then whenever you see LO2L, that stands for living off the land, that is a technique that I think every red team aspires to, and every offensive threat actor aspires to. That is simply breaking in and accessing your networks the way your people do, because that is the most effective way to remain surreptitious and hide in the noise. So the Chinese Nexus espionage improved throughout the year. I would argue all tradecraft did, and I'll have another slide on that shortly. The evolution of spear phishing is interesting to me. Part of it was driven by, I think Microsoft disabled the default running of macros in documents and Office containers. That was a great step. We all got better at end user training. Our secure email gateways got better. We went to more multi-factor authentication. So it's my opinion that attackers now are spear phishing through other comm channels. That simple. What I would tell you, probably the fastest way to cut through this, because I have 11 minutes and I have a lot I want to cover, is the attacks that I saw successful, you could detect all of them if you have web proxy logs. Because what you need to detect is the downloading. Like, nobody knows how much inspection your secure email gateway does. If you get a document with a link in it, you don't know how deep the secure email gateway is going to go tracking what you link to. So you want to make sure you're not downloading .exes, .bats, .com, .vs. all the different executable files. The other technique was to have compressed archives that were password protected, different secure email gateways. Really don't publish how they handle some of those things, so you want to go to your web proxy logs and set up rules for that. And the third most effective rule, and we gave you 12 in our M-Trends report, 12 different rules to use to detect the new techniques of spear phishing, is if you don't normally use third-party storage like OneDrive or SharePoint or Google Drive, drive.google.com, set up rules to look for what you're downloading from these places. Attackers are circumventing the secure email gateway with links and trying to get you to download and execute things. So we can catch that, and everybody's gotten a lot better at that. Overcoming MFA, we've seen this happen enough that I wanted to put a slide in here on this. It's really the first two things on this slide. It's the push notification fatigue, and that's happened in cases we responded to, where we just keep jamming, if you're an attacker, jam a bunch of push notifications to somebody, so they just hit, yes, I'll take that push notification. Most of us don't have that problem anymore because we're aware of the ways to circumvent it. Second thing is one-time passwords or timed one-time passwords. That's been overcome as well. And the other three is where you want to go. So it's not good enough to say, yes, we do multi-factor authentication. We have to do multi-factor authentication that prevents help desks from giving away one-time passwords or to prevent the SIM swaps. Because I'll tell you two things I can't fix with rules and alerts. SIM swapping, and your help desk is designed to help people. We are responding to some of the most devastating breaches because bold, aggressive English native speakers are calling help desks, and helpers are trying to help them. And they're getting one-time passwords set to access networks and wreak havoc afterwards. So make sure your MFA can withstand the social engineering attacks that have gotten way better than in the past. Better OPSEC and evasion, I really just want to go to probably the infrastructure. You know, I can tell you when people write malware, they don't write malware that logs, fine. And then the customized malware that we are seeing is starting to leverage when they compromise edge devices, it's leveraging the code that's already there. It's actually like appending Python to other pre-existing code, so you can create a new URI to download to or something. I would focus on the infrastructure. We're seeing modern espionage groups and even criminal elements recognize it is best to compromise your victim target from local IP addresses or same nation IP addresses. And then another problem that we're seeing is really compromising people when they're outside the enterprise. And we all need to figure out a way to make sure we can protect our employees when they're accessing enterprise resources from outside the enterprise, from non-enterprise resources. Compromising the homes, getting the keylogger in there, seeing the account information posted on different Telegram sites is a real problem. But when I look at this, the infrastructure is creating a lot more difficult attribution, difficult rule sets. And then the living off the land techniques, almost every threat group starting to go to this. Long story made short, we need better security operations because we're going to have to be able to detect after the 0 day, after the exploit, what the attackers are doing in the second, third, and fourth stages of the MITRE attack chain. Which brings me to this slide, which is, so what are the top 5 things we're seeing used, or the TTPs after the breach? And you see them right here. Detecting anomalous use of PowerShell, very important. Detecting HTTP traffic or HTTPS traffic that's anomalous on your network, very important. Knowing lateral movement via RDP or noticing remote RDP from outside your network, very important as well. And service execution. I haven't figured out a good one, and maybe one of my folks will catch them in the hallway on noticing file deletion, but it is the 5th one. But you need rules to detect, if you assume breach, these things, without a doubt. So that was a lot of bad news, right? It's like attackers are innovating faster, there's no risk of repercussions to attackers. The reality is we're detecting attacks sooner than ever before. We started recording dwell time, well, you can see it here, in 2011 on every case that we responded to, and Mandiant traditionally gets hired for the cases that are at our scale and scope where people do need our help. So we don't respond when people are 5 minutes behind the problem. Dwell time went all the way from 416 down to 10. I think part of the reason the dwell time went from 16 days down to 10 is we did respond a little bit more to ransomware. People tend to notice when they've been ransomed. And then the detection by source, I showed this slide to somebody and they were like, is that good or bad? I want to make this unequivocal. You'd rather detect your own incidents then have a third party detect it, because then you can handle it discreetly and on your terms. Usually when you know from a third party, you got to wonder how many third parties know what happened to you. But this is a great trend, and you can see it was amazing to me when we first started responding to breaches in 2004 or 2005. It was basically 100% third-party notification of the breach to people. You get down to 54, I think that's real good. I think that defense operations has improved about as well as the offense is innovating. So, not a bad year for either side. Ransomware has evolved, no question about it. There's a lot of reasons for this. Every company's heard of ransomware. Most companies, even including going from the 1A enterprises down to small to medium businesses, are preparing for it. You have companies that have said, we've identified our assets that matter, we've backed up those assets. Those assets include Active Directory and configuration files for critical components of our business. We've made sure our backups are safe. We've done tabletop exercises with the board that has us literally simulate having the worst ransomware we could ever have happen to us. We've gone to our identities and looked at creep and scope, and we've shrunken our identity access for a lot of different accounts, and you get the idea. We network segmented, and you go through all the things. And I can tell you where people are at. Not many companies have now dry runned. How do we operate the business if we get ransomed and we don't have these 10,000 servers? And I can tell you the number one question every board has and every executive has once ransomware does hit you: how long before we're up? It's hard to answer that question until you have to, but I think almost every company that we work with in 1A Enterprise has gotten to that stage of, we know what we'll do when there's a ransomware attack, and we've done our best to reduce the blast radius. So we've gotten good. However, the TTPs have evolved, and it's creating more pain through dealing with, if they do get in and do get data, sharing data with reporters, making it so that the pain for executives is exceptionally high. And I don't want to give too many examples of this because it's too many good ideas for the threat actors, but it's just amazing to me now, when you've been ransomed, it's more likely than not you will be extorted, and it's more likely than not you will start getting other activities and communications from the ransomware actors. Boards are definitely more engaged than ever before in cybersecurity. That's a trend that's been going like this all along. I think there's a couple of reasons for it, but very first and foremost, boards read the headlines. There's a lot of headlines right now. Second thing is boards go where sometimes there's regulation. When you see the US government's Security and Exchange Commission saying to every publicly traded company, over 4,500 companies, you have to have the following reporting requirements annually on your risk management for cyber and your governance for cyber, you get the board's attention. Boards are there to provide oversight to companies. And we're seeing that oversight's been mandated, and we have to communicate it. But there's just a lot of reasons why globally, between sovereign data laws, privacy laws, and cybersecurity standards legislation and regulations that are emerging, boards are very engaged. And I think this has been the best year in my career. I started working in cybersecurity in 1993. I saw the defense accelerate with public and private sharing. And I'll go through two examples. I can only pick one to elaborate on, and it'll probably be the second one. First one is secure by design. Every nation, when you are a software vendor, you're thinking about this. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One, the government saying, hey, here's secure by design. It's signed by many different agencies. The second reason for it actually is a civil complaint filed against SolarWinds, where they kind of say your software development lifecycle was below the line, period. So when you see those sort of things, companies take notice and decide we're going to take it seriously. But one of the things that happened within the last month and a half, is the Cyber Safety Review Board here in the United States, under the Department of Homeland Security, issued a report on a breach that occurred in 2023 to a cloud provider that where there was a key, a token signing cert that was 7 years old, used to mint tokens and one-time authentication for a really, really big scope for the access of email. But what I want to focus in on is the 25 recommendations that was done in that report for all the cloud service providers as well as the US government. And I can kind of sum them up with one of the things was do victim notification. If you're a cloud service provider, tell people when you believe they've been compromised. Find a method to do that. There's another one called, how about great logging that comes with what you're paying for, so that you can audit security events in your network. Better identity and access management was throughout the report, and then transparency. The thought that if you have a vulnerability as a cloud service provider, you got to provide it, and you should share with all your customers what your security practices are. So I put recommendation 7 in the report right in the slide so you can see it, because when I read it, I went, wow, that's something. That is a recommendation that says every year, the major cloud providers that provide services to the government are going to say, here's our security practices, and here's how we're doing on your recommendations, so that all of us can make choices based not just on availability, but make choices based on security. And very quickly, because I'm over time, we get to talk to CISOs when they're under duress. For all the CISOs in the room, this is only 7 or 8 of the constant themes that come up every time, and I didn't put them in any particular order at all. So if these are the things that you're thinking about as a CISO, you're right on par with thousands of CISOs. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your time.